It is super hot and humid. I've always made my own deodorant, and I still think that's an amazing option. It works well, but lately I've been so busy that I've been turning to a pre-made natural deodorant, and I am loving it. It's called Kokomo Cream, and it smells like a tropical vacation. Think coconut and lime in paradise. And it works incredibly well. My husband uses it too. We both love the scent, and we love how fresh we stay all day. My favorite part, it's from a small family business, and you can only find it right now on Etsy. So you can find it by going to etsy.com/shop/Crunchy Betty. Again, etsy.com/shop/Crunchy Betty. And like you said, I 100% echo, like if we all just make small baby steps continually, we're going to go so far with fixing this problem. And I'd love if you could kind of talk about a little bit of a two-prong approach. So on the one hand, in a perfect world, if you were going to build a house that was as non-toxic as possible, starting from the ground up, what would that look like? What things would you consider and what would be different? But then probably applicable to more of us is if you already have an existing home, what would be the biggest bang for your buck things to start right away? I know you mentioned the pesticides, which are huge, and plastics, which I've written about and taken some heat for as well, but I 100% back you on that there's no need to have plastics in your home. But I'd love if you could kind of tackle those together.
Sure. Well, a non-toxic healthy home would be a home where the air quality is not impacted by the materials used, and it would be wired properly so that exposure to EMFs are minimized. And this would be achieved by using what I call an integrated system, and that would merge building biology with building science. Building biology considers the materials used, and building science considers how the materials are put together to create that healthy building envelope. So if you want to build a non-toxic home from the ground up and you had all the great opportunities that you could go look for property, you want to choose the site your home's going to be built on. So the first thing I like people to do things so they don't have to spend money. So do a little research on the area. Find out what was on that land before. Was it ever agriculture? Was there ever industry there? Could there be any hidden drums underneath the ground? Sometimes when you're near a military base or so, that's an issue. Check out the local air pollution, the wind patterns. If you have proximity to a highway, there's going to be more of a high particulate issue. If you are near agriculture, look at the prevailing winds and make sure that you know how it usually blows, because you could have pesticide drift. So after you say, oh, I really want this lot, and you're still want to dig down more, you could do soil testing for any pesticide and chemical contamination. But you also should do a radon test and have an EMF evaluation to make sure that you have ambient fields that are safe. So you want to have ambient magnetic fields of 0.2 milligauss. You want to have electric field level, ideally less than 1 volt per meter. With very high frequency mills, you'd love it if you get 0.1 microwatt per square meter. But, there's a range. We have, very safe and a little bit, still safe. And when you move into areas of concern. But anyway, you look at that EMF site and you determine, is that ambient EMF evaluation safe enough for your home? So once you get that lot picked out, then you're going to need to create your plans. And to draw up your plans, you have to make some decisions based on, ideally, the climate the house will be built in. For example, you would not build the same house in the same way with the same materials in Maine, which is a cold and wet climate, as you would in Arizona, which is a hot and dry climate. And you would also then decide which way those materials are put together, because if you use standard construction practices, you run into more possibilities of mold, toxic indoor quality, etc. So there's a lot of choices out there now. You can get the standard wood framing, advanced framing, insulated concrete forms like Durasol, structural insulated panels, poured in place concrete systems. There's several, different building envelope methods that you can choose. And regardless of the wall structure or the building envelope that you choose, the first priority is the safety of the homeowner through the use of materials that don't threaten your health. And that's going to mean you don't want outgassing chemicals in the indoor air. And you want your materials to be not vulnerable to mold and breathable. For example, a really high priority would be to eliminate formaldehyde-containing materials like OSB, plywood, and manufactured woods. And there's a lot of great new non-toxic products that can be used there. If there's a situation where you have to use a material that isn't optimal, well, there's certain techniques that you can use that can allow the material to be encapsulated so that there's no risk. For instance, if the product can't be inhaled or touched, the danger is eliminated. So it's important. This next part is interesting and important. Obviously, the use of toxic products in construction is typically standard, and it will be included in any building or remodeling project unless you specify otherwise. And so when most people think of a newly built home, they can imagine that new house smell. Well, this would not be present in a newly built non-toxic home. We test the homes after they're built, and the levels are just amazing. I've had architects go over to a house in the middle of the building project and call and say they cannot even believe it. They walk in and there's not a smell. So that new smell is due to the VOCs, the volatile organic compounds in the materials that are outgassing into the living environment, and it's coming from the freshly applied paints, wood finishes, sealers, putties, etc. And until they have cured to no odor, they will emit chemicals into the space. So, materials with high VOCs typically cure out over time. And so when they're applied, they may be very aromatic, but with time it goes away. So this is a very important point. Typically, when a wood finish is first applied and there's a strong toxic smell, it gradually goes away. And there's no issue with that particular material anymore unless that material also has what is called an SVOC component. SVOC stands for semi-volatile organic compound. And the VOCs are the aromatic part, the part that you can smell. The SVOCs do not smell, and they ride on dust, and instead of decreasing over time like the VOCs, they increase over time. So when SVOCs are first applied, the levels in the home are low. The older the home, the higher the SVOC level is. So this term SVOC is very well known in Europe, but it's only starting to emerge in the American consumer consciousness. So enter the green building movement, which is being promoted as a healthy energy-saving movement. It's a move forward, but unfortunately at this time the definition of green is usually what I call self-defined, and there's no clear-cut understanding of what it really means. And the green building movement's primary focus is on energy, not health, although most people link the two together. So simply because a company sells a product or building material that's touted to be green and safe, it might not be. So we must become educated because many are actually very toxic and outgassed for the life of the home. In other words, they never cure because they contain the SVOCs. Now, this might be shocking, but conventional materials are actually much better in many cases because although it might take a while for them to cure out to no emission, the VOCs diminish with time and eventually go away. So, if you think about the strong smell of an oil-based paint, which is very, very toxic when first applied, but over time, maybe even 6 months or more, it completely cures out, then there is no air quality condition or no problem with your air quality. Well, and I hope this is a little shocking. Compare the new highly touted no VOC paints. They have no VOCs, but they have added very high levels of biocides and antimicrobials, which are SVOCs, that do not smell and do not go away. And I can guarantee you that if your drywall gets wet and stays wet, a paint with a biocide on it is not going to help prevent mold at all. It's just like if you're sitting on a couch with a fire retardant. If your house burns down and you're sitting on that couch because it has a fire retardant, it's not going to help you. Our building practices need to be changed so that the homes are not vulnerable to mold. And the addition of biocides in individual materials is not necessary. But the building material manufacturers are taking advantage of the green building movement and the mold phobia. And so because of this, many of the materials used in conventional building that in the past were very safe and not even subject to mold, such as thin sets and grouts, and even tiles, they're now being marketed with high levels of these biocides and antimicrobials. So if you pick up a bag of thin set now, it will likely say very proudly, now with mold guard or something like that. Well, at least they're shouting it out, and you can say, I don't want that. But these SVOCs are the plasticizers, the biocides, pesticides, flame retardants, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and those are things, asphalt type products, things that are chemicals that are released from burning coal, oil, trash, and also polychlorinated biphenyls, that's PCBs. So in today's building, we don't have so many issues with the PAHs, the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or the PCBs. But we do have a lot of issues with the biocides, plasticizers, pesticides, and flame retardants. Typically, both VOCs and SVOCs are found in furniture, insulation, air fresheners, vinyl flooring, caulks, transformers, electrical equipment, Glade plug-ins, scented candles, fabric softeners, laundry detergent residues, wool carpets, scented stationery furniture, etc. So let's look at a vinyl floor. When you put a vinyl floor in, you have a new vinyl smell, and that is the VOC component. Now, over time, that smell goes away, and that chemical emission is gone, and that's good. But because vinyl is made with plasticizers and phthalates, it's still emitting the SVOCs. And these are endocrine disruptors. So, in terms of a non-toxic house and how that would look, well, no matter where you build, you would try to have as little or no of these VOCs and SVOCs. The home would couple a ventilated or pressure moderated airspace, and that means you would be bringing in fresh, purified air coupled with your HVA system. You want to have breathing walls constructed from non-toxic, moisture-insensitive materials that have a high drying potential, which means they aren't going to stay wet and mold, to ensure that your building envelope is a system that breathes, is not vulnerable to moisture, and it's not harmful to human health. So a non-toxic home is a wonderful, wonderful thing to have. So that's kind of sums up that question in terms of what it would look like.
Definitely. And so for people who are wanting to address things already in their home, you already took us through the steps of getting rid of the obvious ones like the